I am currently the co-founder of Better Career, and we'll get into a little bit more about. A lot of it is focused on job search right now because just the job market that we're in currently, where people have been laid off or maybe they're looking for that next challenge. A lot of folks are looking for help with the job search specifically because it is a competitive market. Now there are so many resources that exist that didn't exist even a few years ago, and PreSales Collective is certainly one of those, which is a global community. They have a Slack workspace that's free to join. But the other one that a lot of people maybe sleep on because they're too focused on the technical skills are the soft skills. You know, being able to present, being able to own a room, and not just a physical room any these days, like a conference room, but a virtual room. How do you keep people engaged when you present? How do you structure a presentation? How do you deliver it in a way that is engaging? And how do you ask the right questions?
Hello everyone. In today's podcast of Let's Figure It Out, we will learn more about our guest Yuji Higashi, who has an impactful career. He started his career with consulting company and then worked for high-growth startups. Today, he's not just solving problems with software, but also helping individuals to navigate their career. He's the co-founder of Better Career, a coaching platform for solution engineers and account executives to help them land impactful roles and also grow them into leadership. If you are someone who is thinking to get into pre-sales or sales into software, this episode is for you with more actionable insights. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Let's figure it out. Well, hey, Yuji, welcome to the podcast of Let's Figure It Out. Thank you for taking the time today from your busy schedule. It's a Monday. I'm sure it's kind of busy everywhere, but I'd like to start with how are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me. Excited to get into the conversation today. But yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Just finished my day, so I'm pretty good now.
Good.
Great. So, how about we start with a quick introduction for the audience? So, can you quickly introduce yourself and tell us more about where you're from and a little bit about your history?
Yeah, happy to. So my name is Yuji Higashi. I am currently the co-founder of Better Career, and we'll get into a little bit more about what Better Career is. But essentially, we help coach people in sales engineering and sales or tech sales type of roles. We help them through job search and career advancement and all kinds of different coaching that we provide. We'll get more into that, but a quick background on myself. I started my career way back when in Deloitte Consulting, and working with really big Fortune 100 companies and different consulting projects with them. And then I realized pretty quickly that I wanted to work with small companies. I wanted to go into startup land. And so I was fortunate enough to get a role at a small growing startup called Apptio out here in the Seattle area. And we did a good 5-year run there where I started on the post-sales side and eventually made it into the pre-sales solution consulting side and started doing some services sales there as well. So there was there 5 years, but then had the opportunity to go to another startup where I was hired to build a pre-sales team from scratch. And that was at a company called Outreach, and was able to do that for another 5 years. Taking the company, when I started there, it was about 30 people. And then after 5 years, by the time I left, there were closer to 1,500 people, I think. And I had grown the pre-sales team from scratch to a global team of about 20 SCs at that point. So that was really fun, great ride. But in that experience, I realized that I really wanted to be able to connect with other people in the pre-sales world. Pre-sales being sales engineering or solution consulting. There's a lot of different titles for the function or the role. But what I realized really quickly is that nothing really existed at a large scale where you could go and learn and connect and learn from other people that are in the pre-sales profession. And so that's when I decided to start a community for pre-sales professionals. And I ended up eventually partnering with James Kakis, who we worked together to co-found PreSales Collective, which is now still a thriving global community for pre-sales professionals. And then I did that for a few years. And then in that experience, I realized I really, really enjoyed working with people in their careers and helping develop them in their careers and helping them take that next step or get to that promotion or get that next job. And so that's when we started Better Career. And I started with a co-founder, Maddie Stremick, who is somebody that I work with at PreSales Academy. She really helped me build that program previously. And so we decided to partner up and co-found Better Career together. And so that's what we've been doing for the last few years, is really helping people in pre-sales roles, in sales engineering roles, also account executives in tech sales roles, take their careers to the next level or get that next job, get that promotion, get that raise. And so that's what we do right now, is provide one-on-one coaching for those folks. So yeah, that's the long, I guess, version of my career journey and how I ended up here. But here we are. Hopefully that gives you some idea of where I've been.
Yeah, awesome. No, that's an amazing story. And what kind of like a curve from starting from consulting and getting into startup companies, leading and creating teams, and then creating something of your own, like a baby business for your own self and helping out different individuals. That's a great journey. Now, quick question before we dive more into a little bit on PreSales Collective as well as for the Better Career, but quick question. So this is something very common. As I'm a pre-sales engineer as well at Salesforce, but when I joined, a lot of people were still asking me that, how did someone discover about solution engineering? So what was your sort of like that movement that you recognize that there is a role, something which falls under sales and a little bit of technical, but not completely technical?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've talked to a lot of thousands probably at this point of sales engineers, and it seems like the common theme for how people ended up in the role is very random, right? People have just stumbled upon it. A lot of people didn't know what it was until they just came across it and then realized it's something they wanted to do. So it was very similar for me. When I was at Apptio, I joined as an implementation consultant. Doing implementations for the software after it was purchased, or after a customer would purchase it. And then I started, getting pulled into sales pursuits alongside the solution consulting pre-sales team. And that's when I learned about the role and realized, man, these guys and gals and are having a lot more fun as far as how they're going about their day, and they're doing demos, and they're, painting the vision for what's possible with the software. And that seemed a lot more exciting to me. So that's where I first got exposed to the role and eventually made the switch into it. And I think, from talking to a lot of different people that are in the pre-sales world now, it sounds like a very similar story to how people stumbled upon it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a great move from coming from a back end perspective, like supporting and implementing a platform, to actually selling with the sales team. And it does sound interesting because in my day-to-day life, it feels like you are working with different businesses. You are knowing that how different type of and scale of businesses works, and how we can actually make an impact in their process by solving the problem through the platform. Uh, great. So I have one question about PreSales Collective. So there is a large audience who is still in this particular stage where they're still figuring out in terms of what's out there and how can we still improve. So quickly, how can a new or like an aspiring SE get involved with this PreSales Collective, and what are the different platforms where this can be accessible?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, now there are so many resources that exist that didn't exist even a few years ago. And PreSales Collective is certainly one of those, which is a global community. They have a Slack workspace that's free to join. Generally to join the community, you just go to the presalescollective.com website, fill out a form. It's free. You get access to the Slack environment. You get access to the newsletter. They send you, newsletters every week or so like that. But the good news is that that's one community that exists. There's also a lot of other resources now that didn't used to exist that do, or that does exist in a lot of different shapes and forms. And another great example of that is Consensus, who is a vendor in the pre-sales space. They do a virtual conference called Demo Fest. They also do in-person conferences, also called Demo Fest, but they do in-person versions of that. And that's another great way to connect with individuals who are in the pre-sales profession. Those are really well-run events, and they're also free to attend. So, PreSales Collective is a great resource. There's a lot of great ways to learn and connect through that community. But the good news nowadays is that there's a lot more resources too that are available. Even myself now with this new business, we do some virtual events, but we also are starting to do more in-person events. As an example, tomorrow, co-hosting a SC leader dinner here in Seattle. So we have a bunch of SC leaders coming together to talk about how AI can be incorporated and used within their teams, and how they're applying AI to their team's process and things like that. And so the point there is that there are a lot of great options when it comes to connecting with other pre-sales professionals, learning from each other, sharing best practices across company borders, if you will, and just generally, trying to further yourself in your career or further the profession in general.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, and would love to connect with you when you're in Philly, and if we can grab a dinner or something and
Yeah.
talk about more SE roles in physically, right? So awesome. So now let's dive into the birth of the better career. So I know a journey of 1,000 miles begin with a single step. So tell us more about how did you start having this idea of creating something which the sole purpose of this company is to help individuals to find their next role in solution engineering, or let's say sales, like account executives, or into sales in software. So tell us more about how the overall idea started and what's the story behind it.
Yeah, yeah. So it kind of goes back to when we started the pre-sales community. And what we realized is that there was a big need for that. People just, again, like I mentioned, didn't have a place to go to network and connect and learn. But the challenge we found with a community like that is that once you go into it, it's still really hard to find your way. If you're trying to get into pre-sales, into a new pre-sales job for the first time ever, or you're trying to get that next job, you kind of have to piece all the pieces together by finding a mentor and being proactive, by learning through all the various resources. There's nobody that's really kind of guiding you through the entire journey. And so what we realize is that there's still a big need for helping people that really want more of a one-on-one coaching experience from people that have been in the shoes where they want to be in, right? So if they want to go get that next best pre-sales job, somebody that's been there. If they want to become a manager in pre-sales, somebody that's been in that role, we found that people just want coaching from people that have the expertise in pre-sales, because as we know, pre-sales is a very nuanced role. It has components to it and experiences that you go through that are very specific to this role. And so what we've realized was that people just needed and wanted coaching where somebody could take them from the beginning of where they are in their journey to the end point, whether that's that new job, that promotion, that move into management, whatever it may be. We just found that so many people want that one-on-one coaching. And so that's what we have created with Better Career is a place where you can go to get one-on-one coaching from either myself directly or my co-founder Maddie, or we also have some coaches who have been pre-sales vice presidents and directors, or people that have made big pivots into the SC role very successfully. And so we have a lot of different folks that are helping coach as well, using our methodology, using our best practices that we've learned over the years that really help accelerate getting that person from wherever they are into that next step in their career. And a lot of it is focused on job search right now, because just the job market that we're in currently, where people have been laid off, or maybe they're looking for that next challenge. A lot of folks are looking for help with the job search specifically because it is a competitive market. And so that's probably where we spend a lot of the time and the energy. But we also help people throughout any stage of their career journey, specifically for sales engineers and account executives. So that's basically how we started it and what we're doing so far.
Well, that's amazing. So you are actually giving out to the community where from like the learnings you had, the mistakes you made, and you are sort of helping out individuals that what to do and what to not to do. So sort of like, and how you can land at your sort of like dream job. It could
Yeah.
be an SE role or an AE role. So I know we both are coming from a similar background of like a solution engineer, but let's say for people who are still having that wall in their mind about like, can I be a right fit? Am I sort of like a person who will be standing in front of a customer or talking in front of a customer, doing discoveries or sort of like doing a demo. Am I the right fit? So can you tell like in a simple words or in your own words about like what a SE is?
Yeah, it's a good question. I describe it in different ways depending on who I'm talking to. But generally, the way I talk about it is that SC is somebody who exists or is a role that exists in B2B software sales where the SC helps prospective customers understand how software that they're selling can solve a real business problem. And they act as a consultant for those prospects to try to perform, answer some of their technical questions about the software, perform demonstrations of the software, and generally just show them how they can extract business value from the software that they're selling. That's essentially how I talk through it usually.
That's a very good way to put it on. Is more like uh, solving the problem is the main goal, but it's more like adding the value in that problem and helping you find that solution. So great. So again, this might be another question which I mean I've been hearing since the day I joined as a solution engineer, and coming from not from a proper computer science background per se. So do you need a sort of like a computer science or a technical degree or coding skills to get into this kind of roles?
That's a great question. Yeah, a lot of people think you need a lot of deep technical skills, and the way we always talk about it is that it's a spectrum. There are SC roles or sales engineering roles where you do need to know how to code, and but I would say that there's not that many of them actually. It's actually a smaller percentage than most people think. There's also a large portion of the spectrum where you don't need any coding skills or really any sort of deep technical skills. These companies want their solutions engineers or sales engineers to be much more, I guess business focused. They put it more emphasis on the sales side of the sales engineer or the business acumen side of the skill set. You still need a both. I mean, in all SC roles, you need a little bit of both, technical and business. It just depends on the specific company where they might prefer you to be on one end of the spectrum or the other. So to answer the question, yeah, you don't necessarily need coding skills. It certainly can help. It's helpful in most cases to be aware of code and understand a little bit about code and how it works and ultimately how software runs. But yeah, you don't necessarily need to know how to code to be successful in these roles. In fact, there are many SCs I talk to every single day that don't know how to even read code, but they still have done really well in their careers as sales engineers.
Yeah. One of my previous team lead used to say SEs are sort of like jack of all trades. They know about everything. It's not something they are expert in one thing, but they know about everything and they are able to sort of like help you to find the right solution or at least direct you to the right resource to find that solution.
Yeah, that's a great point, is that SCs are very, very good at learning quickly and finding answers quickly because technology evolves so fast. And so what SC has to do is just stay on the bleeding edge, if you will, of that technical evolution. And if they can do that well, they're always one step ahead of the prospect, of the customer, of the competition as well. And so that's generally what makes a really good SC, is somebody that is just always, has a good knack for understanding technology and learning it quickly.
Yeah. Curious minds always find solution quickly.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you just mentioned about like the whole program for a better career is the goal is to help individuals to find that like the dream job or the dream sort of like position in solution side of the world. But someone who is freshly out of the college, freshly out of the school, and they're still thinking about their different careers, what kind of sort of like skills they need to have just to at least even consider to get into these kind of roles?
That's a good question. I would say that the it's helpful to have some technical skills, and not, we get asked this all the time, what kind of technical skills do you need? What we suggest generally are, if you want to get some fairly universal technical skills, learning things like APIs are a great starting point, because almost software talks to each other through APIs, right? And that is the most core part of the technology that you can learn that is applicable to all software. So if you learn that, that's going to get you at least some conversations potentially for a lot of SE roles. But the other one that a lot of people maybe sleep on because they're too focused on the technical skills are the soft skills. Being able to present, being able to own a room, and not just a physical room any these days, like a conference room, but a virtual room. How do you keep people engaged when you present? How do you structure a presentation? How do you deliver it in a way that is engaging? And how do you ask the right questions? So a lot of these soft skills that you don't necessarily get taught in college or in your role even sometimes, those are things that I think people could really start developing the earlier the better. And so because at the end of the day, when you interview as well, having the ability to clearly articulate why you're the best fit for the role and deliver that in a way that not only shows that you're confident, but instills confidence in the interviewer, the potential hiring manager. If you can do that in a strong way, that's going to give you a much better shot of getting an SC job than telling them you know how to code or something like that.
That's a great point. One thing which I definitely would like to add is like in the beginning of my career as an SE, I learned that how important the listening skill is, because
Yeah.
if you don't listen during the discovery about like what the customer is looking for, and you just have something already predefined in your mind, you might be sort of like going for a solution which doesn't make any sense. So like a great lesson learned in the beginning of my career.
Yeah, that's a great call. Active listening is such an important skill that people often overlook as well. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you called that out.
Yeah. Awesome. So you also mentioned about like helping individuals who are like sort of like tenured solution engineers, and they want to get level up, like promotion, or even to get into the leadership. So let's talk for a few minutes about the leadership side of the business. So how can an aspiring leader, like who is already in solution engineer, target these kind of roles?
You're just talking about like a experienced SC wanting to move into a
Into
management role.
leadership, yeah.
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is always start thinking about that. As soon as you start thinking about that, start having conversations with somebody who's been in that role and can help guide you to take the right steps. And you want to start on those steps very early, meaning like at least 6 months in advance of even thinking you'll be thrown into that role. Because especially if you want to ultimately get promoted into that role, what you need to do is put yourself in a position to where it's a very easy decision for the hiring team or the hiring manager to say, yes, we believe you should be in that role, because you're already doing a lot of things that we would expect of a manager to do. And so, you want to put yourself in a position to be that no-brainer of a decision to be promoted into that role. So, some of the things that we talk about with folks that are considering making that move are, one, step one is always find that mentor or that coach that has been in that position, has been in a manager before, that can help talk you through all the things that you need to think through and all the things that you should be doing to put yourself in a position for that role. So it starts there. You got to have somebody to guide you. That's always going to be the fastest way to get there, the fastest path. And then, once you have that person, they can give you the specifics of what steps to take, some of which would include finding opportunities to mentor and coach people on your team or on other teams around you, right? And that would be in an informal capacity, but there's a lot of opportunities to do that. You can even go externally, right? If there's no opportunities to coach people or mentor people within your direct team or within your company, which there usually are, but if you want more opportunities to do that, there are a lot of different places where you can go to do that. Even Better Career, we have some part-time coaches where they are actively in their current pre-sales role, but they're doing some coaching on the side because they enjoy it, but they're also learning how to coach, in the most effective way from being in the program. So that's another example. The other key thing is with management is relationships, right? Once you get into the management, especially frontline, very much so too, but definitely once you get into second line and above, you're really starting to be focused on relationships, managing upward, constantly managing, expectations with executives and cross-functional leaders. And so building relationships across organization is hugely important. You have to build a team of champions, people that really want to see you in that management role. And for pre-sales leadership, especially, the core relationships are going to be SE leaders, of course, because that's going to be likely your hiring manager and your peers at the management level. But also, as we know, sales leaders, those are going to be the people that you want to be championing you when you go in for that promotion. You want those people to be saying, yes, we want Jeet to be the manager. He's the best person for the job. And that this is example. We just coached somebody who she was actually down in Australia and she was going for an internal management position. And that's what we talked about. You gotta really develop those relationships, and she did. And ultimately, I believe those relationships were a big part of her getting the management position because they were such strong advocates for her, especially on the sales side. They were very strong advocates for her in getting that promotion. So yeah, those are just a few ideas. There's certainly a lot more to it, but I think those are some of the most important things to consider when you're trying to make that leap into management from a SC role.
So relationship is the key over here. Is it with the peers, with the managers, or with the counterparts, which is sales? And
Yeah.
that's the key to get into this role. And also, like, to have a right mentor makes a huge difference, because just like what you're doing through Better Care, it's like they will teach you to what to do and what not to do. So quick question. So since you mentioned about in the previous life, you have done like created a team. So like you are actually set up a team of 20 SEs, managing a team of 20 SEs. What are a few learnings which at that time you felt like these were mistakes, but from those mistakes you made good learnings out of for anyone who is stepping into leadership? So like any quick advice you had learned from that experience?
Yeah. I have a lot of lessons, certainly. The one that jumps out to me, because it has to do with hiring, at the end of the day, you're only as good as your team, and as a leader, right? And so your goal as a leader is to really empower your team to make a big contribution and impact, and give them the tools and resources and coaching they need to be successful. And you have to have a good team. You can't win without a good team. So and a lot of that starts with hiring. You have to be able to develop people, but developing people becomes a lot easier if you're hiring the people that are the best fit for your team and your role. And one of the things I learned early on was that as an early manager, the easy thing to do is, or at least what I thought, was to hire for the most experienced SCs. Let's hire the most experienced, the most expensive SCs that we can find, because they're going to come in and they're going to be awesome because the market, says that they've done well. Their resumes are great. And what I found is that did work sometimes, but oftentimes it didn't actually work as well as hiring the person that may have not had all the experience, may have not had all the skills even, but they just showed they had the right level of hunger, attitude, curiosity, and ability to learn quickly. And those are all things that we kind of learned how to assess for in the interview process. And those folks that I hired turned out to be my top SCs that I've ever hired in my career, over some of the folks that maybe had more experience. So the lesson there would be just to any first time managers is don't rely too much on experience. It is helpful, when you can find a candidate that has that, but always look for that attitude, the hunger, the not just the ability to learn, but the desire, right? They have to have the curiosity and the drive to learn and apply what they're learning at a very rapid pace. And if you can find somebody with that, but that doesn't have the experience, I mean, that's somebody that has a lot of upside and can make a big difference for you and your team. And so that's one of the big lessons that I learned early on.
That's cool. Well, this has been an amazing conversation so far, Eugene. Thank you so much. Like, you gave us so many insights about like how you shape your career from like starting as an individual contributor to starting your own business with a good motivation of helping out individuals to find their new role or something like a dream role. One last question before we wrap it up is, what kind of advice you would give to that 18-year-old Yuji to do something better, or like any lessons learned from now that you would give it to the 18-year-old guy?
Yeah, I guess the first thing that I would say is find something that you're passionate about, interests you, and just go after it. And if you just go after it relentlessly, you're going to get there. And that's what I've always found in my career, is that sometimes things, targets or goals seemed very, very far off and big, and I would just keep my head down and keep pushing after them, and eventually they would happen. And once you do that a few times, you realize that you're going to find a lot of challenges. You're going to face a lot of rejection. You're going to have a lot of, bumps and bruises along the way. But if you keep at it and you keep your mind set on it and keep finding a way to push forward, you're going to get there eventually. And that's what seems to continue to happen for me, at least in my career. The other thing I think for people that are early on is find some mentorship and a coach or somebody that has been or is where you want to go, and don't be afraid to reach out to those people and just ask for a little bit of their time and maybe some career advice, and start small, but eventually a relationship like that can turn into a really strong mentorship. And careers are really built, I think, on strong mentorship. And so if you can find people that are willing to take the time to give you a little advice and take you under their wing, that can make a massive difference in where you can go in your career and the things that you can accomplish through having good mentors. But it all starts with you taking that initiative to find those people, to reach out to them. But I think what you'll find when you do that is that a lot more people are willing to help than you might think. People love giving advice. People love helping others. People love paying it forward. And so if you find people that are, again, in the place that you want to be or have been where you want to go, don't be afraid of reaching out to them, because more likely than not, they'd be willing to at least give you some time. And then that limited amount of time could eventually turn into a lifelong mentorship potentially. But mentors are massively important. In any, you look at anybody, Tim Cook, Steve Jobs, Bezos, everybody had mentors, right? So you need mentors to continue to help you grow and point you in the right direction. So that's the other big piece of advice I'd leave y'all with.
That's true, because first rule of being an SEO or even into sales is like, don't be shy, ask for help, and learn from the masters. And just like you mentioned, like if your goal is so far, like take one step at a time. 1% change today will make a huge impact on the 100th day, because you are already going towards the goal. So great advice. Yuji, thank you so much. This was an amazing conversation. I hope all the listeners who are thinking about like getting into the solution engineering role and who are messaging me and you and a lot of other SEs that whether this is the right fit, I'm pretty sure they will make their mind up and probably get on this goal. Thank you so much for taking the time today from your busy schedule. Look forward to more such conversations down the road in the future, and wish you all the best with the better career.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me, and yeah, good luck to everybody on their career journey out there, and hope to see y'all soon.